All right, let's get into the last tutorial for this little section here. And we're going to talk about how we can manage our scene, keep it clean, and, just make sure that the rest of the people on our team, if we're working with other people, don't go crazy from a messy scene. Now, I've worked with large teams and I've worked by myself as well. And I could say managing your scene properly is just as important when you're by yourself too, because at the end of the day, you may model something and come back to it, 5 years later and say, oh man, I could use that model for something I'm doing now. And if you have kept everything clean and you have it saved properly and you know your naming conventions and everything, then it's really easy to go into that model or that scene and open it up and pick it apart and get what you need out of there. On the other hand, what a lot of people do, and I'll be totally honest, most of the people that I work with, not everybody, but most, they had some pretty messy scenes, and it was kind of a nightmare. Now you guys are going to be pros, and pros keep their scenes clean, right? You don't always have to clean it immediately. Sometimes you get into it a little bit, and then you go back and start naming things and organizing things. That's okay. But before you pass that off to somebody else, you make sure that you do it professionally and they open that scene up and they're like, man, this dude's got clean, or dudette. It's got clean scenes, okay? That's what I want. All right, so let's get into it. All right, so let's open the outliner first. We've got 3 objects in here. We've got our human size. So I'm just going to go ahead and say male underscore size. And I have a naming convention that I use for any reference. I usually put an REF in front of it. So if I say REF male size, hit enter, then I will always know that this is my 60, 60, 180 cube. The sphere, you may want to just name it sphere 1. That's fine. I get rid of the P typically. But the P can indicate that it's a polygon or something like that to you. Or some people will put in something like geo and then underscore sphere 1. If you're, you have to be flexible with this if you're on a team that does it differently than you. Obviously when you're in Rome, do what Romans do, unless they're doing something really stupid. So for yourself, you can come up with your own naming conventions. Just make sure they make sense. Okay. For the cone, we'll just call this geo. Oh, I hit the button. Oh no, I got it right. It's my sausage fingers. All right, there we go. So just gonna save this. Oh, I haven't saved the file. What do you know? Well, let's just put it on a desktop for now. And I'll put it as test. That's what everything is named. Test. I have like 5,000 test files. Okay. All right, now we've got these 3 in here, and we're like, well, I kind of want the geo or the sphere and the cone are always going to be together. Maybe you're going to say like, okay, I'm going to, see, we have grid snapping now. Let's put on point snapping. Maybe you're going to say to yourself that this is a sculpture that I've made. I'm such an amazing artist. Look at this sculpture. And you want these 2 to live together. So what you could do is you select one, and then you hold shift and select the next one. Now I've got both, and you can see in my outliner they're both selected. You could do the same thing in here. You could just select one, hold shift, and select the next one. Or if you're going from here to here, just hold control, and it'll select, okay, the different ones. But we're just getting these 2. If I held shift, by the way, it'll select all the ones in between. That's why I didn't do that. So grab these 2 and hit Control G. And what it did is it put it inside of a group. And this group now has a center pivot at the origin of the world. That's one of the things that groups do. So that way, if you group a whole bunch of stuff together, they'll all have, now they have their individual center points, or pivot points, I should say, already. But the group will give you one that's a universal for everything in there. So what I'm going to do to the group is I'm going to name this, double click, I'm going to name it, I don't know, cone sculpt. and because it's geo, you know, or let's say it's a group, maybe I should just name it grp underscore there. As long as I know what I'm doing and I have a good naming convention. Now if I click on this here and open this up, you can see I still have these in here. What has happened right here is we have made a parent-child relationship, and that is indicated by the fact that you can see like there's a bar that comes down and then it branches off, and then it branches off to this. These two are like identical twins in a sense that came out at the same time, because they're not parented with each other. Like this isn't parented to this, but this group is the parent of these two. So anywhere I move the group, the children go with. Let's turn off the snap. Anywhere I move the group, the children will go with, because the group is the parent. Okay, but if I want to move the children, I can move them without moving the parent. Alright, so let's go ahead and minimize that. So this is one way to keep things organized, by putting your stuff together in logical groups. Okay, what are those logical groups? Well, that's going to depend on what you're doing. You know, maybe you're going to look at a reference of a really cool sci-fi building, and you're going to like build all these blocks that kind of make the shape up, and then you'll probably want to group all those blocks together, and that's going to be your, you know, your group. That's logical setup, so you can move them all as one piece. So what other thing you could do here is, if I select all of these, I can also make a layer. So if I go over to here, you see I'm hovering over this button on the right, and it says create a new layer and assign selected objects. So I'm just going to click on that. And now it made a new layer, and it's visible. But if I go ahead and click this V right here, it disappears. Well, this is very important when you're working on lots of stuff in a scene. There are times that you're not going to want to look at certain things, and they're going to block your line of sight, and you're going to be annoyed by them. So you're going to want to do this. The other thing you might want to do is you may want to turn this into a reference, so or a template. So what this is, like right now it's a reference. I can see what reference means is that I'm not supposed to be able to move it. Or is that because I'm on the group? Typically, let's see, the template I know you can't move. Well, is that a bug? I'm using a new oh, you know why? I tricked myself. Okay, I had it still selected. So if you still have it selected when you turn it into a template, it does allow you to move it still. Same thing with the reference. But now that I have it, I deselected, I can't select it again unless I turn it back to the regular empty setting. So that's why that happened. And this button right here is at this moment eluding me. I don't remember what that's for. It's just the render settings probably. But we'll figure that one out later. Now, one thing you could do is you could double click on this, and you could say, okay, I want this group to be my blue group, and you can assign it, you know, this blue, and you can call it something. You should always name your layers. So let's say this is cone, and of course I should have put in, you know, LYR, layer underscore cone, or, you know, now that I'm looking at that, that might annoy me. Let's just put the layer on the other side of it. For the groups, I'm not so worried about, or I should say for the layers, I'm not so worried about having the naming convention. That might not matter that much, so I'm just going to go ahead and say save. And so now what's interesting about this is if I select these, let's go into, it's supposed to be a green wireframe then, so, okay, alright, I meant blue wireframe. If you turn on the wireframe on shader, which is this button right here, it'll turn this wireframe to whatever color you set here. So if I go ahead and change this to yellow and hit save, you can see it change to that. So then that helps you know what layer your stuff is on. There you go. Okay, these things that you're seeing here is when you put your scene together, you will be making sure that you name them correctly, you group them appropriately, and you put them in layers correctly. If I ever come over to you in a lab and I want to see what you're working on, and you pull it up and you have to dig through 5,000 file or 5,000 pieces of geometry, and they're not named, it's not organized. That's taking time away from everybody else. So that's one reason why you want to do this. The other reason, of course, is that the professionality of it. I think that's a made-up word, professionality, but maybe it's not. You want to be professional when you hand this off. When you're in the real working world, you're going to hand it off, and people are going to be like, "Clean, I love it." So that's important. Okay, so the assignment. We'll go into the assignment next. All right, before I end this tutorial, there's one thing I forgot to show. How do you add another object to these groups or layers? Okay, very simple. If I want to add this in the outliner to this group, all I have to do is click on it, middle mouse drag on top of the one that's the parent and let go, and it will drop it to the bottom. Okay, now that is part of the group, and you can see the pivot point stays the same. All right, so the same thing goes for the layers. Now, it looks like it actually worked, and because it's hiding this whole group, the layer was also hiding this object. But let's just middle mouse drag this out of here, leave it right there, and now if I hide it, you can see it's not going in there. But I can still add this to the layer, so it's very simple. Have it selected, right-click on here, and just say Add Selected Object. That's simple. Now they're working together, and we'll move this back. Okay, looks good. If you delete a group, by the way, or I'm sorry, if you delete a layer, you didn't actually delete the objects. You just deleted the layer it's helping you organize. Okay, so if you do delete a group though, and everything's nested underneath it, it will delete everything, as you can see. All right, that's it for this one.